So it seems we've got not just one but two leaked Primarch's rules within 1 week. Let's talk about a rumoured updated profile for Roboute Guilliman himself. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Primarchs once more, and perhaps some news on a fairly hotly anticipated update for 9th edition, Roboute Guilliman, and if he will be getting any new rules at some point. The Primarch of the Ultramarine certainly got some help with a big points drop recently, but on the tabletop his rules kind of do show their age a bit. He's very much an 8th edition rule set model in a 9th edition world, maybe killed a little bit too easily with mortal wounds for a character of his bearing. And I feel like a lot of people would quite like to see an updated 9th edition profile for him. From the leak that we've had today, it does look like that might be out and about. There are rumours of a Space Marine Codex coming sometime next year, potentially with a bunch of supplements being redone, and perhaps a few hints from Games Workshop in those Battle Force boxes that they released for Christmas. The Codex Space Marine supplements, so things like Ultramarines, Salamanders, and White Scars, I believe that they're the only rules in 40k that haven't had a 9th edition remake yet, and it perhaps seems likely that when Games Workshop's designing an entire edition and its releases, they will get remade at some point to bring those armies into line with the edition, even if it sounds like it's not going to be too long-lived after that. It is going to be interesting to see how any Space Marine update fits in with 10th edition being rumoured sometime next year, even if there are a good few months separating the two. If GW does decide to pull a hard reset on the game, then those books could be very shortly lived indeed. In any case, this is the first rules rumour out of those books that we've heard about, this leak apparently coming from the Eldari Discord server, and apparently from one of the sources who was behind that advent calendar of Eldari Codex leaks that we had last year, now coming back with a few details for playtest rules for Space Marines. At this point I'm not 100% sure if the rules have been posted elsewhere or not, but from a quick look it looks like the earliest post that I could find was the Eldari Discord server post itself. Feel free to correct me if it was somewhere else before there though. As always, absolutely take these with a pinch of salt. My suspicion with this, that given the source is probably somewhat accurate, but even if they do know the playtester rules, there's a good chance that they can be updated and changed before the book releases. And for text leaks like this, it certainly wouldn't be a particularly high bar to fabricate the entire thing. From the rules that were previewed though, it does look at least pretty believable, very much in line with the sort of thing that I would expect for a reimagined Guilliman. In any case, take with as much salt as you like, but the Roboute Guilliman leak currently would have him at around about 320 points. That would be a 20-point increase from his current value, where he was dropped to in the previous chapter approved. The Avenging Son of the Emperor will be gaining a +1 strength, +1 leadership, and +1 attack boost, putting him on a movement 8, a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2+, strength of 7, toughness 6, 9 wounds allowing for character protection, 7 attacks, leadership 11, and a 2+ save. I feel like one of the things that certainly won't be clear at this point is whether or not Space Marines are receiving Shock Assault. If the Codex is indeed redone and it's not just the supplements being redone, I feel like there's a very good chance that Games Workshop would just roll the attacks into the profiles in the same way as they did with the Chaos Space Marines. But if it's just the supplements getting updated rules, then I guess you might be able to add 1 extra attack on top of this, topping him out at 8 usually. Otherwise, for his defensive rules, it looks like a bit of a side grade, as we'll get onto in a second. A 4+ invul save, a downgrade from a 3+, but gaining -1 damage, so he'd be extra resilient against anything that's 2 damage in particular. His resurrection rule looks like it's tweaked to be a lot more reliable as well. He'd resurrect on his first time is killed on a 2+, and left with 2d3 wounds remaining. I feel like that tweak in particular is very nice. He's going to come back with a bit more of a consistent wound profile left, and it's only going to be failing that on a 1, so a little bit less chance of falling flat on his face when he is brought down the first time. Then moving on to weapons, the Emperor's Sword and the Hand of Dominion both have had different profiles. The two profiles were actually kind of very similar against really quite a lot of targets, but the Emperor's Sword now is a lot more firmly in the anti-infantry category, and the Hand of Dominion for the anti-tank. The Emperor's Sword now doubles his attacks, so either 14 or 16 with Shock Assault. Pretty mad there. A strength +1, so strength 8, that's the same as it was before. AP -3, and a damage of 2 rather than damage 3. The sword now gains the ability to ignore feel no pain type saves and damage caps. That seems to be a fairly common rule in later 9th edition codexes, as a way of stopping enemies ignoring wounds by any mechanism. Generally I'd say that it seems like an upgrade. You get a lot more attacks obviously, but you do lose 1 pip of damage, so damage 2 rather than 3, and you lose the mortal wounds that you get on a 6. Seems pretty fearsome though. Looks like Guilliman would be extra deadly to 2 wound infantry if this profile is accurate. Otherwise the Hand of Dominion is a bit closer to how it was before. It's still strength times 2 and a damage of 4, but it's gained an extra pip of AP, so it's now 4 AP rather than 3. That one will have also gone up to strength 14 from strength 12 as well, kind of relevant if he's ever fighting against anything that's toughness 7, I suppose. That now seems firmly the option that you're going to be using if you're tangling with enemy heavies. It also has the built-in ranged attack as well. That one has taken probably a little bit of a downgrade, 30-inch range and rapid fire 2, strength 6, AP 2 and damage 2, so either 1 or 2 fewer shots as it was rapid fire 3 before, but gained a bit of range and a bit of AP, so a bit more threatening against heavies. Then finally, while Guilliman is a bit of a beast in combat, it's really his buffing rules that are perhaps one of his most iconic things. It does seem that he's lost the plus 3 CP benefit for being the Warlord apparently. That does seem a bit of a shame, as he wouldn't be giving it anywhere near as many buffs, and that's quite important in things like Nephilim, though I suppose we might have an entire new seasons of 40k, where command points might not be quite as scarce. Otherwise though, his primary buffing aura is reroll 1s to hit and wound within 9 inches, for all Imperium core units. That's a pretty big deal, a very meaningful boost, and you could be applying that to a lot of scary stuff. And then interestingly, rather than the full rerolls to hits that you often get for characters like this selecting one unit, instead if he selects one core unit, then they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound instead. So not giving out additional rerolls, just flat modifiers. I feel like on some units that's going to be more helpful, some units it's going to be less. Perhaps it's particularly good for anything that's going to be punching up against something that you're wounding on 5s or 4s maybe. Previously, his rule was an aura of 4 rerolls to hit and reroll 1s to wound for Ultramarines core and characters, so he's now normally going to be a bit more focused on buffing one unit in an absolutely major way. It does mean that one unit will basically be getting +1 to hit and wound and reroll 1s to hit and wound, so you'll be converting an awful lot of attacks into saves. As for how much better or worse he is than previously, obviously it's kind of impossible to tell when you don't have the rest of the context of the codex that he's going to be in, or any special supporting rules that he gets. First up, on the defensive side, if he is indeed losing that 3+ invul, then his durability does seem like a side grade at best, and sometimes it's going to be a flat downgrade. With a 3+ invulnerable save, on average you'd tank around about 11 or 12 las cannon shots to kill him, whereas the new profile, even with the damage -1, that's going to be more like 10. Admittedly, he will be better against things with flat damage, he will be tougher against damage 2 weapons like plasma guns and things, and again comes out a little bit ahead against damage 3, as that used to divide into his 9 wound profile rather well. I kind of would be a bit surprised though if the final profile of him doesn't have any additional defense against mortal wounds. That did seem to be about the easiest way to kill him before. I've certainly made my fair share of videos, this combo kills Guilliman. That's basically anything that spits out 9 or 10 mortal wounds pretty reliably will do so. I feel like a lot of the other Centerpiece characters have had some sort of defense against them. I kind of feel it would be a little bit odd for a Primarch not to have something. I also would have probably guessed he would have got some sort of damage cap like Abaddon, I suppose not according to this leak, but it would seem kind of weird to me that Abaddon the Despoiler would be harder to kill than a Primarch. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that front. In melee, whether or not he's keeping shock assaults will probably be a big deal for whether or not it's better or worse, but at least by the rules previewed it sounds like there's a good chance he would no longer reroll his own hit rolls, which would be a slight downgrade and perhaps make him kind of equivocal with getting the extra attack. In terms of raw damage output though, assuming no shock assault for the new profile for worst case scenario, he does come out very slightly better versus a toughness 7 vehicle. The extra pip of AP and wounding on 2s are both fairly big deals. I believe that on average he's a little bit worse against Terminators now, due to the Emperor's Sword being really quite good against them with a flat damage of 3 plus mortal wounds, but he's actually quite a lot better now against 2 wound infantry, with his double attacks raw giving you far more swings at killing those Space Marine equivalents. Probably overall I'd say a slight upgrade, though I must admit nothing absolutely enormous there. Finally, in terms of buffing rules, the +1 to hit and wound is pretty interesting, kind of a different sort of flavour of buffs from the rerolls that you can get from many characters. Often if you're having a core Space Marine unit take aim at a optimal targets within his buff range, you might well have units that get to hit on 2+ rerolling 1s and then wound on 2+ rerolling 1s. You'd near enough be converting just about every attack into damage. It's definitely a bit more powerful, and I'd certainly like to hang out with some of the biggest and scariest Space Marine units around, though I guess it would be a little bit less applicable to more units, and you'd have to focus on just one huge damage dealer. Could be nasty on anything from Dreadnoughts to standard Intercessors to be fair, or something like Eradicators or Devastators perhaps. I'd certainly guess that Space Marine units are probably going to see some points drops in the next chapter approved, It'll be interesting to weigh up the best core damage dealers after that. Otherwise, the big aura of re-rolling ones to hit and wound for all Imperium core units is pretty interesting. Obviously nice enough for Ultramarines and things. I suspect that he'll be able to be taken as a Supreme Commander Warlord for the entire Imperium though, in a similar sort of way as Abaddon can. He could use his rules to buff Imperial Knight Armigers or Custodius Dreadnoughts, both pretty fearsome damage dealers there that maybe need a little bit more investment to get those sort of re-rolls on them normally. Seemed like you could maybe be pretty terrifying advancing into the field alongside them. If he gets very efficient and has similar sort of rules to Abaddon, then it might be that you see him in a whole bunch of lists besides just Ultramarines. His buffing rules certainly do seem a little bit better than Abaddon's overall. He does provide a lot of extra damage to core units. Overall, if he were to come out with the exact same rules as this, I'd say it's probably a small upgrade, though not enormously so given the extra 20 points he pays. Maybe a little bit easier to kill, but also comes back considerably more reliably on a 2+ rather than a 4+. The melee is better against a lot of targets besides perhaps 3-wound infantry, and his buffing rules seem pretty mighty. Let me know what you think though. How likely is this profile to be accurate? And if you were to have this profile in the rumoured new Ultramarines book, how good do you think it'd be? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly be keeping up with the Space Marine news and rumours. I'll be aiming to have another video out about the new Space Marine Codex within the day. There are certainly a few more rumours that I'd like to cover. Otherwise, if you'd like to help support the channel and keep all these videos coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description if you're interested. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.